Welcome into the Dynasty Download. My name is Delph Dad, your host for today. We are going roster diving yet again. I do apologize for the bit of a break that we've had here. Life has kind of been kicking my butt, but we're back in action. Today we have a very special episode for you. We have the analysis of my own roster. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We are going in to the mind of Delph Dad himself, trying to understand where his team is at. So to give you a little bit of background here, Delph Dad is the owner of the Lake Geneva Convention, total record of 29-39, but the proud owner of the 2021 Championship Cup. In 2019, I started out with a solid fourth place finish after a pretty rough regular season where I finished 6-7. 2020, 7-6, ended up losing both of the playoff games that I had, both in the first round and then also in the fifth place game. In 2021, though, I clutched up. Got a 9-5 finish of the regular season, so not bad, but not amazing. But the playoffs were owned by Delph Dad. First place finish, championship ring, only to be followed immediately by the next year, falling all the way down to 5-9 and 11th place. In 2023, I committed to the tank, 10th place, 2-12, and secured the first overall pick. The quarterback position is not a pretty thing for me. It's objectively the lowest position I have behind maybe running backs. Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi are an uninspiring duo at the top, very likely to be pretty much worthless by the end of the draft. Drew Lock, Tyler Huntley, and Nick Mullins make up fairly decent backup quarterbacks, but definitely no one that you can start. This is just a gaping gap in my roster. Moving on, because there's no need to dwell on that. We have running backs. Devon Achane and Roschon Johnson at the top, followed very closely by Tyler Algier before we have a sizable gap to where we get to Pierre Strong and Jeffrey Wilson. Devon Achane probably is the most polarizing running back there is, right? You know, this site has him as the RB6 for a guy who really has only played in like 8 games. That's pretty nuts. But he can explode on any week, as we saw during the Denver explosion this year. And a guy who averaged well over 5 a carry this year on the season. So really an interesting running back. I really don't know how to value Achane, but I do like that he's on my roster. Roschon Johnson, this is a guy who I think is a really good roster piece for a rebuilding roster, right? He's not worth too much now in the sense that I acquired him with a late second pick, but he's a guy who could take over the Chicago job next year. It's, or at least be a significant part of a backfield committee. And as we saw from the last 2 years, Chicago's rushing offense has been pretty strong under Matt Eberflus, and I expect that probably to continue, especially with what is likely to be a rookie quarterback. Even if there isn't a rookie quarterback, and we're back to Justin Fields, you're still talking about what was the top rushing offense in 2021 and the second place rushing offense in 2022. There's value to be had there. Tyler Algier was a lot more valuable 2 years ago when I took him in the second round. But man, oh man, after a really strong first year, it has been rough sledding since then. Not sure that this is the type of running back that you would want long term, but is a solid backup for now. Pierre Strong Jr. looks to be a perennial backup, and Jeff Wilson, What a guy to have die on your roster, huh? Please, someone take him from me. I feel bad. I mean, he's a storied running back. He's going to provide value to this year in 2024. We'll see. Someone take him from me, please. Moving on to wide receivers. This is really where my team is strongest. Garrett Wilson at the top, obviously a really strong option, especially going into 2024 with Aaron Rodgers hopefully returning. Though long-term, his prospects do concern me, just due to the quarterback play. Brandon Ayuk took off this year, broke out onto the scene, I would say, and looks to be directly competing with Deebo Samuel for that top receiver slot in San Francisco. Michael Pittman, if he stays in Indianapolis, will be, I think, a strong option, but anywhere he goes would probably be a top 24 wide receiver, in my opinion. And then finally, Jameson Williams. This guy's career, man, I don't even know what to make of this. Like, top pick coming out of the draft, but couldn't start early because of a torn ACL late in his college career. Explodes on the scene his very first game, limited snaps, but manages to catch a 40-yard touchdown in his very first NFL catch. And then just poof, puff the magic dragon, he's gone. Like, what happened? Fast forward to this year, you're thinking, year 2, they'll get him more involved. He's farther away from the injury. Suspended for 6 games. Comes back after the suspension. Again, pops off in his very first game after the very first game back. But then, poof, puff the magic dragon disappears again. And he's not getting the snaps that you would expect from a top, 20 draft pick. This guy's career is wild. But I think this year he showed a little bit more flash towards the end and got a little bit more play towards the end. So I'm thinking this guy's career might be finally settling in. Still a very young wide receiver. He's tied to a good offense. And next year, I think that this guy could do really well. The rest of the roster, Tim Patrick, obviously the GOAT. But Michael Wilson, Trey Palmer, Kyle Phillips, Malik Keith, all of these guys, and Xavier Gibson too, all of these guys are, I think, contributors to a deeper roster. I don't think any one of them is going to be that true sort of alpha. Trey Palmer and Michael Wilson, I could see taking the next step and becoming more of a wide receiver 2. But for the most part, these guys are wide receiver 3s, minor contributors. Kyle Phillips, obviously worth 99 fab, and you can't convince me otherwise. Although, honestly, though, Tennessee's in a weird spot. I don't think anyone on their offense is going to be good in 2024. We'll see. And then Malik Heath. If this year is any sign, next year he will have 2 games where he just pops off randomly because of injuries to the Green Bay wide receivers. So I'll take 2 games from a guy who I picked off the waiver wire. And then tight ends. This is definitely my strongest position. Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely at the top are probably the only tight end where there's a true handcuff, and also one of the top 3 or 4 tight ends in the league. So really strong, feeling good about that. Brevin Jordan has a chance now with Dalton Schultz coming into free agency. If he does not return to the Texans, that's because they believe they have their tight end in Brevin Jordan. He was a kind of a well-touted prospect coming out, but obviously tight ends who aren't named Sam Laporta usually take a couple years to get into the league. This is his 3rd year, and I think he could really shine in a role. He had sparks last year, including a really nice 70-yard touchdown late in the season. So this is a guy I'm keeping an eye on going forward. The rest of this, Gerald Everett expiring. Cole Turner, not the guy we thought he might have been, but I think he was a rookie this past year. Tommy Tremble, Harrison Bryant, backup tight ends to mediocre offenses. Really not going to be able to get a chance to shine unless a severe injury happens in front of him. And now finally we have our draft picks. So this is definitely something that just is a little bit dicey for me at this point. The 101, I have the 105, and then I have the next pick down is the 209. This here could make or break this roster, right? The 101, this is definitely something that I've been going back and forth, who I'm going to take, right? Marvin Harrison Jr., or Caleb Williams. We'll know more with the NFL draft and the landing spots, but God, this has been brutalizing me for the last 3.5 months ever since I secured the first pick. The 105, however, this is just, it's gravy, man. It's added extra value. I'm very excited to see who falls to me here, as there are more than 5 prospects that I like in this draft. And depending upon landing spot, that could mean a really good wide receiver or a really good quarterback falls to me here at the 105, which are 2 really nice bonuses. I think that that's going to be something I'm really excited for. And then the 209. This is a deep wide receiver class, and there's value to be had in the second and third round. I'm not going to say who I like yet, but there's a couple of guys who right now are projected to be, day 2 picks, maybe in the NFL, who based off of, NFL draft landing spots might fall into that late second round. Very excited about them. If not, this probably the 209 is where some of the small amount of the top running backs will fall, right? Running back is a position that is really weak in this draft class. So I expect a top 4 running back might actually fall down to the 209, which, again, not a bad spot to be in. So the biggest things that I would recommend for this roster in the offseason is to play off of the draft picks, right? You have a 101 and a 105. These 2 draft picks are worth more than many of the players on your roster already. And they're only going to increase in value as we get close to the draft. The only other thing is Mark Andrews is getting up there in age. Either this roster has to turn around quickly, or Mark Andrews might be a trade candidate later in the offseason if you don't think he can turn it around. So these 2 items, I think, will help build out this roster. I think that this roster is close to competing. If the 101 and 105 go well, I think this roster will be a mid-tier roster next year. If they fizzle out, if you pick the wrong person, this roster might be a bottom feeder yet again. All right, well, that's going to do it for today. Deep diving the mind of the Delft Dad himself, seeing what his roster looks like. We will have yet another episode coming out next week. We'll be hopefully returning to the weekly cadence as my life is starting to relax a little bit again. I appreciate you all and your patience. If you make it to the end of the video, appreciate a like, maybe even a subscribe. What really does mean a lot, especially early on in the channel. So I love you all. I'll see you next week. And as always, this is the Mad Lad Delft Dad signing off.